he didn't have body armor either. No body armor. He was just wearing camis. I feel like I'm getting a shot at the doctor, but the doctor's just not giving it to me. I remember feeling my heart race. There's dead people here. I'm not stepping on them. They're not stepping on me. We immediately started taking like extremely accurate artillery fire. I'm not motivated at this point. At that point, I'm pretty scared.
In this episode, we talk mainly about his experiences from the U.S. Army to the Ukrainian forces and his experiences there. And we do talk a little bit about a few of his combat experiences. If you'd like for us to have a second conversation and get more in depth on more of his combat experiences, make sure you let us know about that in the comment section.
Thanks for being on the podcast today.
All right, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So you can start back as far as you would like to. I know most listeners are curious about your previous experience before going over to Ukraine, but go ahead and start wherever you see fit.
Yeah, so I was in the American Army for 2 years. I served active duty. But prior to that, what got me into it was I got my family's pretty big into firearms, and so I just got into shooting, and then I remember going home and was on YouTube how to get better at shooting or something like that. And I must have been 13 or something, and I had a video pop up on my YouTube recommended, and it was firefight at, it was a Vice News video. I remember that, and I can go back to the video still. But it was firefight in Donbass airport or something like that. And I was like, what is this? And it was 2014, and I was watching this video of just these Ukrainians getting trapped into this little corner of the airport. They're just fighting it out. They're just shooting at each other, and just everything was just crazy. It was absolute mayhem. And that was my first experience of ever seeing anything like that. And I was like, man, that's so badass. I want to do something like that. That's made for me right there. And so a couple years go by, and I was serious about it. I was like, I actually want to go do something like that. And so then, at least I thought I did. And I went into the Army. I went into the infantry. Big Army, nothing special, nothing fancy. Did a couple things there. Got a couple of spanking on the wrist. Got a little bit of trouble. And then that was pretty much it for my military career. But the one thing that stuck out to me as I was getting out was there was an NCO there, and he was Ukrainian himself, and he was fighting at the Donbass airport in 2014. And I was like, oh man, dude, you're I know you went through the thick of it, because I saw the videos and stuff like that. I was just asking him questions. And yeah, go ahead.
So you kind of ended up meeting somebody in a way that you maybe kind of saw or was involved in something that you saw on YouTube?
Yeah, exactly. It's just
in 2014. How old were you in 2014?
I was 13.
Okay. Yeah, I think YouTube or the internet, it gets people, it gets people motivated about certain things, some good things, some bad things. But I guess it was 2000, I guess 2000, I don't know, 2005, 2006, somewhere in that time frame when I was going through high school. There's a video. It's still online. It's the battle for Fallujah video. And it starts with a heartbeat. It's boom, 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 boom. And it's
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's we pretty much told the insurgents, we're going to be here at this time. If you want some, come get some, And I remember whenever that came out, and that was my highlight video that got me hooked, and was yeah, that's me right there, So you were in the Army, and you were motivated by a video that you saw online of I guess conflict happening. But in 2014, I mean, I'm not too familiar, what was going on in Ukraine in 2014, because it wasn't what's going on right now.
Yeah, so in 2014 there was like, I honestly I don't even know the roots of what happened. I just know like the Russians had like there's different like regions inside of Ukraine. So like they have the Donbass, they have like the Kyiv region, like just different oblasts they call them. It's like different states, uh, and they had like the Luhansk state, I guess you can say, or Luhansk Oblast. They had inside of there, they had something called the LPR, Luhansk People Republic, and then you had the DPR, Donetsk People Republic, and they were kind of like, I don't know. Some people say they're nationalists. I'm not going to get too deep into it because honestly, I don't know like what it was, but it was kind of like a rebellion against the Ukrainian government, from my understanding. Um, and pretty much they were pro-Russian, I'm assuming, because they wanted to be connected to Russia. And yeah, so and then obviously Russia did the whole thing of Crimea in 2014, where they took over Crimea, and yeah, one of the bigger battles so happened to be the Battle of the Donetsk airport, and that's just what I saw of it. That's at the time when a 13-year-old me just saw the battle for that airport and was like, that's it. Like that's the pinnacle of combat. I want to be that close to my enemy for whatever reason.
Yeah, I totally can connect with that idea. Nothing wrong with that. So, how many years were you in the Army for?
I was in for 2 years.
And at what point, I guess when you're in the Army, and I know me and you had this conversation before, we kind of talked about this, whenever you join the military, you might have your own aspirations of what you want to do while you're there. And then the Army or the Marine Corps has also their own aspirations of what they're going to have you do for them. Right. And I guess if you stay in long enough and it's the right time and you can kind of position yourself in a certain way, which isn't easy to do, you can seek out the conflict that you might be looking for. But oftentimes it's a roll of the dice. You might go, you might not go. And so I assume, or maybe I'll just ask you, when you were getting out of the Army, did you feel like you didn't quite fulfill that, view or image or that you saw of yourself, like from that video, like, hey, like I'm really motivated by this is what I want. And then you go into the Army and 2 years, and like you had told me before, you didn't get an opportunity to go anywhere. I think things were dying down at that time or completely pulling out of Afghanistan. And so was that kind of a motivator for you to seek out other ways to kind of find that thing that you were still looking for?
Yeah, so actually while I was in like when I had first gotten in, I got in 2019, the very end of 2019, like talking basic training, 2019. In basic training, there was this guy there. I'm not gonna say his name, but he was a special guy. He was like one of the cool cats. He was there for a graduation that we were having, like our first graduation. His brother was in my graduation class. And he was telling us like we're not going to see nothing. Like he told us flat out, he's like, listen, for the next 5 years, like nothing's going to go down. Like I'm not gonna like he was important enough, and he had enough like stripes like on his rank that we pretty much trusted what he was saying. Like you never know what's going to go down in the world, but he seemed like a no BS type of guy. Like he'd say it to you pretty blunt. So he said like the chances of us seeing any type of combat, like actual combat, if we're not in a crazy unit, is extremely low. So that was an instant motivation killer for a lot of us, especially being in the infantry. Like that's your one job, is to go to combat. Like that's your one purpose. Like that's your only purpose besides, I don't know, like sweeping the floors and having fun in the barracks. Like your one purpose is to, go and kill people. And we got told we weren't going to do that. Obviously by some random guy we never met, but he had the rank, like he had the right criteria to tell us like what was going to go down. So then while in basic, like we got a weekend passed, and I was like, man, like I was like, what can I do to see combat? So I started like going on to like websites of like private military contracts, like all these like different crazy things. And I was like, what's the minimum criteria I need to like get in? So then I followed every path that I needed to while I was in to get that minimum criteria to start going down that path in my life. So I was like, okay, well maybe I can't see combat in the American Army, but if I could go join a private military, then I'll go see combat that way.
So while you were still in, you were exploring other options, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Um, was that something that you, I guess, had to maybe keep a secret in a way? I don't know. Is that a secretive thing or?
No, I mean, I didn't really keep it a secret. Like, again, I was in an infantry unit, so if I told the guys like that I was hanging out with, like, yeah, once I'm out of here, I'm gonna go do some private military contracts. I don't think they would have cared. Like, I mean, I didn't go to my first sergeant and I wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna go join a private military. I didn't go do that, but I was just looking.
And so what you found, I guess whatever it is you did find, you found it online.
Yeah, yeah, you can find anything online.
Yeah. Was it like a job posting or was it like a?
No, I mean, you just go to silentprofessionals.com and you'll see everything that you need to see, and you'll see the minimum requirements, and you'll know what's for you and what's not for you.
Gotcha. So you were actually in the Army, but you were looking at with the requirements, minimum requirements, and you were making sure that you were fulfilling those requirements, right, while you're in the
Yeah,
Army.
yeah, pretty much.
And so, how long? I guess what was the process like? Like you filled out online, they contacted you by phone, or?
Well, I never got that far. Like I was looking online, I was meeting the minimum requirements, and then I got in trouble. So I was like, oh dang, like this is gonna affect my background, like with what I got in trouble with. So I was like, all right, like let me see like another route that I can take. And that other route kind of just fell into my lap, um, where I ended up meeting that NCO who was Ukrainian, who had connections, like very deep connections into Ukraine. And so I got out. This will probably clear some things up. I got out in February 17th of 2022, and the war started, I think, the 24th of February, something like that. It was around that time frame, but we already had known, like my unit that I was in had known that like Russia was like there's a mass number of troops on the border, like something was going to go down. Like we were like everybody in my unit already knew. Everybody was super excited and stoked. Like they're like, "Oh, dude, I hope they drop a nuke so we can go over there and just like tear shit up." Like everybody was excited. Like I can't explain it. Even my first sergeant was like, "Let's do this." Like I hope they do something.
Are you talking about who, like on the Ukrainian side, were excited, or?
No, American.
Oh, really? So they were thinking like, oh, they're gonna start something, and then somehow we're gonna have to get involved.
Yeah,
Which obviously
yeah,
didn't happen.
yeah.
Probably not something the government wants us to be directly involved in.
Um,
Boots on the ground, and from a line platoon perspective. I'm not saying there aren't things going on, of course. Who knows?
well, it's crazy. I actually, I saw, I saw some of the Bradleys that I was working with in Ukraine, like, like that I was working with back at my unit. I was like, dang, like, man, that's Charlie C4. Like, it's still got the tag on it. Like,
Yeah, because I also think well, maybe it was just the Marines. I don't know. The Marines like disbanded the Abrams tank or something, or I don't know.
I think so. I don't think there's any more tanking divisions, like, or just tankers in general.
I don't know. Maybe they're like, this thing's heavy and it's just going to get droned and we're going to be out a bunch of money. So they're probably investing more money in other things. This is maybe off topic or whatever. But I saw a video that had nothing to do with the military, but it was a guy that I guess he works construction, heavy machinery. And the machine is like out doing the work, and he's like inside the building with these monitors and all the controls, and he's just like controlling the thing from inside, like AC, nice chair, and he's not actually in the machine. And I was like, why don't all our that's what we should be doing. Like, there should be nobody driving these things anymore. I'm sure it costs a lot of money.
You would want people driving them. I don't think you would want a machine doing it.
Well, I mean, they are driving them, they're just not in them. Like,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think you would want humans in them.
yeah. Well, I think humans are superior. I kind of like crap on like maybe AI or like robot and stuff kind of things, because it's just like we're not there where people think we are. Where like a robot's going to be walking into a building and clearing it. It's like we're so far from that. Like, they can only do so much. You're going to have to put a human in there, and until they can find something that can take the place of us, like legitimately, it's always going to be boots on the ground type of deal. So when you got out of the military, you already had something lined up because you made a connection with somebody?
No. So, I was getting out, and that particular NCO, I'd known him because he's been in the unit, but he just kind of like popped in and out. He was never really my team leader or squad leader or anything. And towards the end of my time being there, me and him got like, just like started talking one day at a range day, and actually it was for a Bradley range. Me and him started talking, like me and him like really started talking, got into some deep conversations, and that's how I found out he fought in 2014. That's how I found out just about him in general. Like, I knew about him, but never really sat down to talk with him. And just sitting down and talking with him for hours because we had nothing else to do. And so I got like his contact information and stuff like that. And it got even closer to like the end of my time being in. And yeah, he pretty much knew that he was going to go back to Ukraine, because at that time we already had known that Russia amassed a bunch of troops in the north and like on the east. Like they were getting ready to fight pretty much. And I remember seeing his Instagram page, and he was talking about Russian aggression, and like before the war he was talking about Russian aggression like to Ukraine, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this guy's delusional. Like, this guy's crazy as hell. Like, what is he talking about? And I remember like when Russia crossed over into the Ukrainian border, and I shit you not even 5 minutes later, he sends me a message, and all the message said was, "I told you so." And I was like, all right, so this guy knows, what he's talking about. And I told him, like, I was like, I remember jokingly telling him that day that we were talking, I was like, dude, if Russia like really attacks Ukraine, I'll go over there personally and I'll fuck up some Russians with you. I remember telling him that, and he was like, all right, dude, I'll hold you to it. Like, I'll hold you to your word. And so that day came, he hit me with that "I told you so." And right there I was like, dude, like if this isn't a sign falling into my lap that I gotta go like see some combat or see some type of action, I don't know what else is. So for a couple months I didn't do anything. I was like, I'm gonna go, but I can't just jump the gun on this, because obviously, like, at the time I only had one kid, I still had a wife. I was like, like everything was kind of like not lined up right. My relationship with my wife was like extremely rocky, and I was like, I don't really know what I want to do yet. So a couple more months go by, and like me and my wife completely split up. Still in my kid's life, and still sticking around. And I was like, man, I really want to go do this. Like, I really want to go like to Ukraine. Like I absolutely need to go. Like, this is the mecca for me. Like, what else? Like, there hasn't been a modern like close near peer combat in years. So I was like, all right, like this is it. Like, I'm gonna go do it. So I waited till just after Christmas of 22. And in 2023, early 2023, I had like gotten my contact, like my NCO that was over there. I was like, hey, who do I reach out to get like actual foreign help to get over there, and like what do I need to bring? What's everything that I need to do? So he sent me all the information. He told me like which border crossing to take, which way is the fastest, the safest, like everything like that. So I did all those steps, and I arrived in Kyiv in early 2023, and yeah, like that was pretty much it.
So originally you were on a website, but that didn't work out, right? The website that you mentioned, and then this next time around, your NCO was over there, I guess.
Yeah, so he got out too. He got out like right before the war started. Like he got out. Like he got out. I want to say like February. We'll say like 20th or something like that. Like right before the war started.
And then you contacted him because he was already over there and he kind of knew the process, and then through him is how you know made more connections to kind of get over there. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, was there still a certain level of uncertainty on what it is you were going to do and who you were going to meet, or was it all kind of laid out and you kind of knew what to expect?
Well, first going over there, I kind of knew what to expect because like I had made a connection, and like the connection was like seemed pretty solid. I mean, you never know because you're meeting a complete stranger from across the world. But like I went over there, obviously like I arrived in Kyiv by train, and like I mean, like the second my foot hit the floor, like down in Kyiv when I got off the train station, like off the train onto the train station, like the sirens started going, like just the air raid siren started going, and like I remember just hearing my first air raid siren, I was like, man, like dude, I haven't even been here for half a second, and I'm already hearing an air raid. Like that's kind of cool. Like I don't know, I was just it just pumped me up. It motivated me for whatever reason, and that night I stayed in a hotel actually. I met some Ukrainians on the train. They helped me like translate for me and stuff like that. But yeah, like that was my first night there. Uh, and then in the morning, I met up with the guys that I had connections with, uh, and we were getting ready to head out east.
So you met up with the people that you were connecting with to get yourself over there, basically.
Yeah,
And what do you like? You said you were getting ready to head east. Do you mean like you were like to kind of go out there, like it's on, like we're starting right now?
yeah, pretty much. Well, those guys they have already been out there. Like some of them were actual Ukrainians, like they lived there in Ukraine. They were born there. They're like that's their homeland. Some of them were foreigners. There was more Ukrainians than foreigners, but yeah, pretty much they already had been prepping. They were like going through like this whole like basic training slash like just training, just freshening up, zeroing rifles and everything. They were already going through that, and so they pretty much told me they're like, hey, listen, you're just gonna have to jump in the stack and like fall in. So I was like, okay, like, and they're like, if you can do it, like, do it. If you don't feel like you can do it, let us know, and like, you can wait till like the next mission out to like train with us and stuff and get more comfortable. But I was like, no, I'm not gonna pussy out on this. Like, I'm gonna go for it.
So basically, I mean, and is it safe to say like did they have some level of confidence in you just because you had made some connections and somebody was vouching for you at least? I'd imagine, right?
No, they we ended up going to like a range, like my like for actually 2 days. I would say because we were in Kyiv for 4 days, so 2 days before us heading out east, I went to a range with them, and yeah, that was pretty much it. Like they saw me at the range, they're like, "All right, can you at least shoot, move, communicate, do like the very basic stuff?" And they told me too. They're like, "Hey, when we're out on the front, if we're going into a house, like you're going to be the very last guy in the stack. Like your job is like rear security. Like unless you're like somehow find yourself like at the front of a stack, then like cool. But otherwise, try to position yourself to be at the back of a stack. Like pretty much it. They obviously like when we were like at our little safe house in Kyiv, we were practicing like fucking first aid and like oh what's in an IFAK? How do you use what's in an IFAK? all the very basic stuff. They just wanted to make sure I knew at least the basics.
Had they themselves at that point seen any confrontation or any conflict?
Oh yeah, all of them.
So did they? I'd imagine they're like basically on the job training for you, right? But
yeah, pretty much.
At least telling you, hey, be aware of this, be aware of that. If you see this, this is kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so, how many of you were there in that particular group?
I'm probably not. I'm not going to say the number.
Oh, okay. And so did you bring your own equipment, or did they supply you with some?
Yes, like all this equipment back here is pretty much what I brought out to Ukraine.
Is that including a weapon or no?
No weapon, no ammo.
So they supplied you with a weapon?
Yeah, they did.
Iron sights?
The first one, yeah.
Nice. So how long after you got there were you given a task with this group of people to go east?
Well, immediately, like I said, like when we had met up, they pretty much said, hey, like we're prepped, like we're ready to go, like we're gonna have one more range session, like for you to see what you can do, and if we like you, we'll take you out east with us. If you still don't feel comfortable with us, then you can sit back, like you can come out east, but you can sit back and not go on the actual mission. You can watch from like the drone and like just see how we move and stuff like that. So yeah, like pretty much like they liked me. So as soon as I got there, well, they already told me that they were going out east, but as soon as I got there, they pretty much said, hey, like task one is like head out east.
Okay, so the next day or 2 days later,
or yeah, so we had that range day. It was 2 days. So then 2 days after the range day, on the second day, we started driving out east.
Okay, so you're motivated. You're like, this is cool. You're with these.
I'm not motivated at this point. At that point, I'm pretty scared.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So at what point, once you got off the train, you're like, this is cool, and then you met these dudes, and you're like, hey, if you can hang with us, you can come with us. At what point did that change from, cool and exciting to holy shit, maybe?
Somewhere in the car ride over there, to be honest with you. Yeah, like the second that car door closed, they were playing like their little rock music and stuff like that. But in my head, I was like, fuck me, like I'm doing it. Like I know I'm gonna do it because I was like, I already came out this far. Like no way I'm not gonna go through with it. But I don't know, something was telling me in my gut. I was just like, man, did I like royally fuck up? Like did I make the biggest mistake of my life that's going to cost me my life, and or it's going to be the greatest experience I've ever experienced in my life?
Yeah, that's two completely different ends of the spectrum of emotion. Did your family know about what was going on to any extent? Like maybe not just your wife or at the time, but maybe like your relatives?
Oh yeah, so I told them, but none of them believed me. They're like, because I told them, I was like, hey, I'm going out to Ukraine, and like some of them just kind of like laughed. Some were like, yeah, like whatever, just like had their little chuckles and stuff like that. But I mean, obviously they realized when I like left on my flight there that I wasn't playing anymore. Like I was gonna go do it.
Did you have a way to communicate with them once you got there?
Yeah, I did.
Were you able to continue that, or you had to, for operational security reasons, not be able to communicate at a certain point?
I mean, yeah, like I can communicate with them. We have. I'm not gonna say like what points, because I mean every group has their SOP as to what you can and can't do. I'm not gonna say that group's SOP for like communication back home, but it was pretty free, I would say. At least I felt like, because up to that point I've never been to a combat zone, so felt pretty free for a combat zone for me at least.
Right. So could you go walk us through, where you, not particularly like where on the map, but I guess speak to as much as you can on like you left, you're in the car, You had those thoughts and feelings that were going through your mind, and then you arrive wherever you arrive, and obviously you had left, I assume, with some sort of task and mission, and then you stopped or got to wherever it was you were going. How did that change the way that you thought about, what were you expecting? What did you expect to see? And how did you like see the outlook of what was going on at the time?
Yeah. So when I got there, it was already pretty, I would say, late in the war, because like remember at that point it was only the war had only been going on for a year and a couple months. So there's already been a ton of foreigners already over there fighting. They've had their groups established and everything, and I didn't really have that. Um, and I was kind of in a weird position because I've heard about different at that point I heard about different groups of like where to go, how to get in, like what you need to do. But I heard the process was extremely long. Like you were gonna wait like 8-9 weeks before you can get an actual military ID to join a group, and then you're gonna wait like another 2 months to actually go see combat. And that's for one particular group. I mean, just by me saying that, those guys are going to be in your YouTube comments commenting right away. Like they're going to be like, why are you saying that? That's not true, blah, blah, blah. Or, yeah, that is absolutely true. And like, yeah, you'll get one or two, but they know who they are. Like that's just how that is. But for me,
No, I was going to say, I'm just a little confused on that. So are you saying that basically after you got there, or maybe even beforehand, that there was another process, and I'm sure there's different units in different places or whatever, the different criteria and this, that, and the other thing, but for other people, or that they had to go through a much longer process, a waiting period, and all these other things before they could actually get to where you were? Did that come before, after, or that's just so happened to be the case for them and it's different for you?
no. So when the war was first kicking off, Ukraine was just taking anybody. So the process was extremely fast. But then, at least from what I've heard through the grapevine, is that people were like faking what's on their resume, or like, oh, like, yeah, I got a DD-214, but my dog ate it, or I don't know, some bullshit. Like they couldn't actually present a fucking DD-214. So, uh, like that's what made the process extremely long to get into that particular unit. And so people were pushed away by it, and then they were kind of going back to like the regular, I would say, quote unquote, regular Foreign Legion, um, where it was a lot faster to get in. But you were doing, at that point, if you're in regular Foreign Legion, you were just a line unit, at least to my understanding. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the two. There's only like really three places for foreigners to go. You can go to the Foreign Legion, and they got like three companies worth of guys, or two companies worth of guys, something like that. Not all of them are bad. You just gotta have a good head on your shoulders and understand when to leave. Like just play it like a game of poker there. Then the other place you can go, I'm actually not going to say that. I'm going to reserve that. But there is another place that you can go that the wait time is a lot longer, but you're going to have some cooler stuff, but you're going to deal with a lot more political crap. And then where I came in was just connection. So you can't really do it now anymore. And it was hard for me to do it. It was extremely hard for me to do it. I just got, again, it kind of just fell into my lap, where I knew a guy who's known people since 2014 who's been out there and like, again, vouch for me, but like also I had to prove myself, and he knew that I could prove myself. So I got extremely lucky. In the beginning, there was a lot of like, I would say, freelance groups where people were just kind of like, all right, give me a gun and ammo, some grenades, give me a group of men, and send me like in this general direction, because that's where the Russians are. I was not part of a freelance group. I was part of a group who was established into the Ukrainian military. However, I was a freelancer myself, in the sense of I did not have a military ID while operating on the front. At least for a little bit of time, because I didn't want to wait for the 8 weeks to get a military ID, and I didn't want to go to the Foreign Legion at the time, because it was very it wasn't as coordinated as what it should have been.
Right. So going back to, I think we kind of cleared that up, but going back to your first experience and where you ended up when you got out of the car, how did that play out?
Yeah, so I ended up in southeast Ukraine, like really southeast Ukraine, in a place that Russians are pushing very heavy right now. Um, the city down there was, when I got there, was pretty. It was pretty destroyed, honestly. It seemed like the Ukrainians were just holding on to a couple of shops, like mom and pop shops, and I don't know, just they still had the will to hold on to that land because they wanted to at that point. Um, I won't say the city name, but obviously I think people can connect the dots when I mean heavily pushed, as in.
What did it look? What did it look like when you got there? Was it still all standing? And
Yeah, majority of the buildings were standing. Actually, it just a lot of them had holes in it from like the roofs would be caved in, just from artillery rounds. Like any big building, like residential, perfect. It didn't seem like any of the residential buildings were really messed up at all, to be honest with you. But any like if there's like a factory or just like any big building that would be perfect for a company size element to be operate out of, it didn't have a roof. It was pretty messed up.
was there any people there, or like did life look normal, kind of, or was everyone pretty much gone?
In the suburbs, life looked pretty normal. Like you could like there's like when I as I was yeah because I was driver at this point. As I was driving up, um, there's actually like a few kids playing soccer. Like they're like yeah. I mean, it looked like a Ukrainian small town suburb. Like
So you had these I don't know, say, we're not saying regret, but we had a change of feeling, getting off the train and then getting with the guys and then going from where you were to where you ended up in this, I guess you call it city or village. And when you arrive there, it seems relatively normal, it seems like.
yeah, I mean you can hear the cannons going off, like the 152s and stuff like that going off, like the artillery rounds off in the distance, way off in the distance. Like I'm talking, this is like when I first entered that village. Not even village. It's I guess it would be a city, like a very small city slash town. Uh, like you can most definitely hear the artillery, and we saw a couple artillery pieces as we were rolling in.
So I'd imagine, though, if I'm rolling up to that, I'd feel, at least when you see people like that seemingly are obviously they know what's coming and maybe they're preparing or whatever. But if it seems like people are walking around and kind of going about their daily life in a certain sense, it would probably give you a certain level of comfortability. Like, okay, I must be safe right here for now.
Well, I didn't really feel that because again I was so fresh into the country, and I think my nerves were very like just like tense. So I mean honestly like I mean as as not cool as it sounds to say, I was pretty scared, to be honest with you. Like I was pretty nervous. Um, I remember like my first night sleeping inside of this like old lady's house. Like I was up the whole night. Like I was like, man, like what? Like I just left my house that had AC and like my car, like everything, like just like now I'm in some old lady's house and I ate some weird soup and and like some super like dry bread and like now I'm just here like sleeping on the floor like waiting, and I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I was just waiting.
So, what was kind of the next thing? I imagine where you were, was it you were there to kind of in a holding pattern, or were you waiting for something else to kind of go in a different direction?
It's kind of weird how the Ukrainians work. They kind of uh like, hey, you'll find out when we get there type of thing. And I don't, maybe it was just for me because I was like new to the group. Um, but that's kind of what I was like, got the gist of. And the one guy that like I kind of like really trusted in the group that I was working with, he kind of gave me like the same like, hey, it's pretty normal around here. Like just the Ukrainians keep everything like a secret until they really have to tell you, and then like they just expect you to go and do it. So that's kind of what we're waiting for. Like the Ukrainian leader that I was working with, he was really cool. He kind of like gave me a heads up, like, hey, we're gonna go like kind of clear a trench, and it's like that's pretty much what the first mission. Well, that's exactly what the first mission was clearing a trench.
Did he use the word kind of, or he didn't use the word kind of?
No, he actually looked at me and was like, "Okay, tomorrow we're gonna." Well, he didn't look like he just like looked at the group talking to us, and he was just like, "All right, guys, you already know." Like because everyone had been there already for quite a while. I was the only new guy there. Um, he was just like, "All right, guys, you already know. Like same as usual, we're gonna go and clear a trench tomorrow morning at 4, like in the morning, and like that's what we're gonna go do."
How far was the trench from where you were currently?
Honestly, well, where I slept at.
Yes.
I don't know, probably like 12 clicks, 13 clicks. It was pretty far. It was on the complete opposite side of the city we were staying in.
So did you move exactly from where you? I can't imagine you did, but you moved exactly from where you were to the trench. Probably not. It's so far
No,
away.
not even close. No, we had
Yeah.
like 13 stops before we even got there.
And I assume the closer you got, the more desolate and devastation probably it looked, right?
Uh, I actually, well, inside the inner city, yeah, it looked pretty messed up because it was just like, I mean, I'd assume that the Russians were just trying to like demoralize the city itself and be like, oh yeah, like like your city center's just like not even useful anymore. You guys have like no more power, pretty much. Like, why are you guys even staying there? Like they do to most villages and most cities. That's usually what they do.
So, how long before you got to the trench? Like he said tomorrow, right? But he just meant like tomorrow we're going to start moving that way, right?
Yeah, so like tomorrow, like so we had one day there, like the day that we got there, we had one day like of just like getting our ground because we had a super long ass drive, and so we got there and we rested for a day. We didn't do shit. Like we just kind of like, hey, like you got your pack ready, you got this like thing, like this is our SOP. They're just telling me like, hey, have all your TQs on one side, like have everything like just ready to go. And I was like, okay, like this is like how you guys want me to have like my like where you guys want me to have my tourniquets. You guys can have them. Like this is where I keep my IFAK. And they're like, okay, cool, like whatever, like like just going over our basic stuff. And then that following day, we got up. I would say around like 2 in the morning. Yeah, I want to say like 2:30 somewhere around there. And yeah, we loaded up in the cars. We Man, like the thing is like a lot of guys they're like, hey, I need energy drinks before I go into a trench. And like so we stopped at like one place and this person was like, oh, they don't have the flavor I like, so we got to go to this next place. And like, yeah, well, I mean, honestly, like that's literally what it's probably still like. There's guys who like every time that they see a certain gas station, they're like, hey, we got to go there because they got the best hot dogs. And I don't blame them because like you go into you might not even make it into the trench, man. You might step on a landmine and like you're like, dude, I want to crack open an energy drink right now. I just lost my feet, Like, yeah, people got some weird thoughts out there.
Like they carry it with them and they don't like I was thinking they need an energy drink to drink before they do it, but they're like they need to have it when they're like they have a moment within the thing to drink it.
I'm gonna send you a photo of this guy, right? And his name was Cola, and you'll see what I mean. But you'll like, and you can pop in that picture like somewhere over here, and like, man, you'll be like, he's really got a bladder full of Coca Cola, and he's carrying a 2 liter Coke with him into like it's just on his pack. Like something that like that would never fly in the American military. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude.
So you I guess like they're making all these stops for all these snacks and you're probably getting more confused like what the hell?
Dude, I honestly, so like when we got to like the fourth or fifth stop, I asked, I was like, guys, are like, I feel like I'm getting a shot at the doctor, but the doctor's just not giving it to me. Come on, let's do this already. We're burning time, and I'm looking at the time. You would think like, okay, we're like on the fifth stop already, but it's only like 3 a.m. and we don't got to be there till 4. Like we don't have to be at the track until 4. And it's like, dude, this time is taking forever. Like it is like going slow motion right now. And so a lot of the guys they started joking with me. They're like, dude, you're gonna rush to your death, man. Like you're gonna die the second you get out there. I'm like, this is not what I want to hear right now. But I just kind of rolled with the punches, I guess. Like I was like, all right, fuck it. Like I'm already out here. I guess it is what it is.
Yeah. So obviously, I think this is no secret, but I've seen all kinds of different videos of, trenches being taken, and I don't, um, I think probably there's different. There is one overall objective, which is like eliminate the people that are in the trench. But in your particular case or cases, were they to do that, but also stay there, or to do that and get out of there?
No, our particular case was to overrun the trench, take literally anything that could possibly breathe. They literally did not care if it was a fucking fire ant. If it was a fire ant, it needed to be dead. If it was Russian, like it needed to be dead. Like it did not matter whatsoever. Like they wanted that trench cleared. Like and my Ukrainian leader made it very clear to the group like we need this trench to be absolutely cleared by tomorrow.
Did you know then if you were staying or you were leaving after that?
No, so I'm sorry. The objective was clear the trench, um, and we were gonna hold a position until Ukrainians came and fulfilled that trench.
Got you. And then I guess at that point, because you would basically be getting relieved, right? Okay. So is it more or less safe to say that there are particular groups of Ukrainian fighters whose job is to take trenches, basically?
To take trenches, they I mean, every unit takes trenches. That's just like the infantryman's job. But now there is Ukrainians that their job is to hold a trench, hold the second and third line of defense. They'll be living in there, and they got the best trenches, like really good trenches.
Yeah. So walk us through your first experience. And I guess you should tell us by saying, okay, like we walked up on foot, we were being quiet, or this was the moment in which, I knew it was go time, and then these are kind of the events that happen within that time.
After all the stops, we got to a certain building, certain type of building, and inside of the inside of one of the garages was an armored personnel carrier, and then there was also a Humvee, and then on the side of the building, there was a Humvee underneath a blue tarp. The armored personnel carrier had it was like a makeshift mount, but it had two PKMs on it. And then just both of the Humvees, they had M250 cows, and they seem pretty Ukrainian modified, because I worked around Humvees before, but these kind of they obviously cut holes into the door for whatever reason, so I guess they can stick. But it seemed like they were sticking the barrels out of their AKs out of the Humvees, and so that they can just have a port to shoot out of. I don't know why they thought that was the best idea to do that, because if somebody stuffs a grenade in there, everybody's cooked, because you're not jumping over the center console on the front or the back of the Humvee. It's just too big. So I mean, I'm pretty sure you've been in a Humvee, right?
Yeah.
An armored one. So your movement's very limited in there. But yeah, so we got there. I loaded up in the APC, as with the rest of my squad, and Ukrainians took over the Humvees. And yeah, pretty much from there we were on our way. It was like we were a little late. It was like 4:20 or something like that, 4:21, 4:22. And the reason why I remember that time is because uh, on my cell phone, and I still have the alarm right now. I have like a 4:30 wake up time every day to like work out. And at the time, I was working out every single day. And I was like, oh shit, let me turn off my phone. And yeah, you can bring your phone out to the trenches and stuff. At least like they didn't really care if we brought it, as long as it was turned off completely. Like you were pretty much fine. And the SIM card removed out. So like yeah, like I remember like, oh shit, let me do that real quick, because I already had the SIM card removed, but I wasn't sure if it saved the alarm. So I remember looking down at my phone. And I was like, okay. So I put it back in my pack, and yeah, like I remember we had like the coolest American tool that I've seen go off once in training, and I was like, are we really about to use this in the trench? And it was a Bangalore. And I was like, oh man, like this thing's gonna go boom. Like they really want this trench. I remember like being in this APC and like we're moving, and like I remember hearing they were like speaking Ukrainian over the radio, and like the American who kind of knew Ukrainian was like, all right, they're saying we're like 15 minutes out. Like we got like, cause you like we weren't trying to like directly fly from what I was told. Like they weren't like going to move in a straight line. They're kind of like cutting angles. So like that, they didn't know like which trench we were going to try and take. Um, but yeah, so they're like 15, 10, and they're like once it got to like 5 minutes out, they're like, all right, like get ready, like start getting prepped. So everyone in the APC started like was like hands on with the Bangalore, because the what we were told to do is like as soon as the door drops, like we're gonna just throw this thing out, and like if we can use it, we'll use it. But if not, like at least it'll be on the ground with us. So if we need to blow it, somebody can go and blow it. Um, the number one thing was getting the Bangalore out of the APC though. Um, and so like we got to like the 1 minute out mark, and yeah, I started really feeling it. Like I remember like sweating. Like I remember feeling my heart race. Like I remember feeling all of that. And yeah, like they're like, okay, like go, go, go. And like I was like, dude, there's no like 10-second warning. There is like no nothing. Like they were just like start screaming go. And I was like, oh shit. And I remember like hearing the 50 cals go off, like pretty aggressive. Like there was no burst to it. It was just like that mad minute, but the mad minute never ended. Like I promise you, it never stopped. Not until those things had to get reloaded. Like, and even then it was crazy, because like I remember seeing them, like it was Ukrainians, but I remember them seeing like use American tactics where like the M2 would run out, it would run dry on ammo, and like they started whipping out 249s, because obviously just whipping out another gun is faster than reloading the Modus. So they just whipped out 249s, both of them, like pretty much in sync, and just like started lighting up that trench. Like anybody in that trench was getting suppressed pretty heavy, because like the APC came straight down the middle of the trench, and then they had both the Humvees like next to each other, but like off to an angle, like so you can see kind of like down the line of the trench pretty much. Well, they could, I couldn't, but they could see down the line of the trench. Um, there was drones in the air. There is two drones in the air, one FPV, and then like they had a thermal up. Um, and I remember hearing the first explosion from the FPV. I'm assuming it killed somebody. I couldn't tell you if it did, but it flew in. I remember seeing like the flash of light and hearing it, and yeah, like that happened extremely quick. Like I remember like running out, grabbing the Bangalore. Everybody threw it out like we were planned and like we were told to, and like shit started to hit the fan for us real quick, because the second the 249s started running out of ammo, it seemed like we just kind of stalled. Like everybody was like, all right, who's gonna go into the trench first? Like when I mean it stalled, like everybody, nobody made it inside the trench. And the one place you want to be is inside the trench. Nobody likes being on the outside of the trench, because obviously you're just sticking out of the ground like a sore thumb. So we were, just outside of it. And I remember hearing, we'll call him, I don't know, we'll call him Bob for his namesake. I remember hearing Bob, the American that I trusted. He was like, grenades, grenades, grenades. And I remember seeing him throw, like I could see his shadow like through my night vision, like from like the corner of my eye. Like I could see the shadow that he was casting. It was a full moon, so like you kind of really didn't need like night vision, but we took it anyways. But I remember seeing like his arm just swinging, and he was just he tossed 3 grenades, and I can hear him, but I don't know if they made it in the trench. But I remember laying down like with my eyes closed and just hearing the bang, bang, bang. I was like, okay, like all right, we got to do something. Like somebody's got to get up and do something. So Bob ended up grabbing me, and he grabbed one other guy and was like, "Come on, follow me into the trench. Like we're gonna go. Like let's go, let's go." And I remember him just yelling and rushing us to get into the trench. That's the only thing he cared about. And there was a Ukrainian who hopped out of the Humvee, and he like joined us in the stack. And I remember he thought I was scared, like to go into the trench, but I was thinking in my head, like I didn't know it was a Ukrainian, but I just thought there was somebody behind me, like because I could hear their footsteps, and I was like, okay, like somebody's behind me, so I'm supposed to be the last one in the stack. So I turned around and I was like, okay, like you go in front of me, and like he started speaking Ukrainian to me, but I didn't know Ukrainian, so I was like, oh dude, what the fuck, like who the fuck are you? And so I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll be third in the stack then. Like that's just how we're gonna have to play it. And so Bob was like, he was like, get into the trench. We had ran probably about like 20, not even 20 meters, like 15 meters, I would say, like around that range. It was just, like super close. We got in, and like yeah, that was it. Like nothing, like it felt like once we got into the trench, honestly I felt pretty safe. Like I was like, okay, we're in here, like this is it. And like we like, so just for context, nobody uses IR lights out there, no IR lasers, no IR flashlights, because you don't know what, like the Russians might have night vision, you might just be giving away our position. So we start pushing down this trench line, and I remember hearing Bob say like, hey, like, like watch, like cover my right, cover my right. And the two man's like, okay, okay, mate, I got you right, I got you right. And like I remember hearing that, and I was like, okay, like they're moving pretty like tactically sound. And over the radio, I could hear the other guys saying that they made it into the trench, like they're behind us, like they're coming up behind us. So eventually, like we put a halt on Bob moving forward, because the trench split off into like a Y, and because it like forked off pretty much. And so we stopped at where it would fork, like, and that's where we agreed on the plan. Like, hey, we're gonna do it like a tactical halt here, and we're gonna cover both avenues of approach. And then then we hear the 50 cals going off again, both of them, and we can see the dirt on like the fork to our left. I could see it, at least. I can see like the sparks and the flashes of the rounds like hitting rocks. Like I can see the rounds like where they're impacting, and it was getting closer to us. So I'm thinking somebody's running down that trench, like towards our position, like they're trying to get away from where the 50 cals are going off. And I, like, as I was thinking that, I remember hearing Bob's rifle go off, and all I hear is like the pop 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 pop. And I was like, oh, whoa, like that's real close. Like what's going on? Because I couldn't really see up there because the trench was kind of narrow. And like Bob was like, okay, they're like that's one, like that's one down, like we got one in front of us. Um, and he was like, I'm still holding it, like still like continue like covering my right. And so like the two man was like, okay, like I got you right, I got you right. And then the rest of the stack, or the rest of the squad, like meets up with us. And then here's like where again I'm 3 man. I was expected to be in the back of the stack. So it was supposed to be the first couple of guys go take the left, and then the rest go take the right, because the right was expected to have less people, like less Russians in it. Um, but that wasn't the case, and I guess I got I guess lucky in my situation where I got to go to the side with less Russians in it, at least for a first time combat experience. There's less Russians on our side, and I didn't get to let my rifle off. I didn't shoot nobody. I didn't like nothing came out of my. I didn't pull my trigger not once. For I mean for suppressive fire, I shot my rifle, but like actually shooting it at another human being, I didn't shoot my rifle at another human that like I was actually attempting to kill. Um, but Bob and the two man, they they got to let their rifles off at a couple guys who came down the trench. There's three more guys, um, so for a total of four on the left side, and then on the right side they had a total of six. Um, and the Ukrainian who was behind me, he ended up he would now become the one man because he went off to the right. He ended up catching some shrapnel from a grenade to his legs, and so he went down. And then there's another guy behind him who was half Ukrainian and Canadian, and he ended up taking one man, and they ended up clearing their side of the trench. But shortly after us like officially saying that we've cleared the trench, we immediately started taking like extremely accurate artillery fire, like extremely like I'm surprised none of the rounds actually landed inside of the trench, but it was so accurate that it was caving in the walls of the trench. Um, and yeah, like that was pretty much it. That happened for about a good, I would say the rounds impacting that close, it happened for a good like 5 to 10 minutes, I would assume. I wasn't really keeping track of time, but it was like a good 5 10 minutes of just super accurate. At least that's what it felt like. It could have been 30 seconds, but it felt like 5 to 10 minutes of just the world's most accurate artillery fire without killing anyone. Um, and yeah, that was pretty much it. After that, the drone team confirmed that there was like they couldn't see no more Russians inside the trench. Um, and the APC and the Humvee already had taken off. Like after they let their second belts of 50 cal go off, they took off because that's what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to take off, go get the Ukrainians if we needed reinforcements. So they did their part right, and I mean that was honestly they even told me they're like that's the smoothest trench taking we've had like ever, and I was like wow okay like that's pretty good. Like I got super lucky on that mission. Didn't get to like do anything really, but I mean like like that was pretty. It was a pretty crazy experience for me. At least it was intense, but it was a good.
So you talked about the Bangalore. I mean, was that supposed to be used, or could have been used if you were expecting some concertina wire or something like that? Is that like the intended purpose of it, or what was the intended purpose?
Bunker pretty much inside that trench. It was like a flat out bunker, and they were expecting like 15 Russians, 16 Russians to be inside just the bunker itself. Um, but there just wasn't it was only like a squad size like team of Russians. Um, and obviously we went with more than a squad size like to go and take that trench. Like we outnumbered them like by quite a bit. Like just the amount of people we had in the Humvee, the people in the APC, and then on top of that, our squad, we just had the numbers game on them. And obviously, like we caught them sleeping. Like it was super early in the morning. I'm assuming that they heard the Humvees and APC rolling up, but they just like when we got there, like I said, it was the 50 cals going off, and like that was pretty much it. 50 cals grenades, and like then we started receiving like suppressive fire. But they like I was thinking in my head that they would have, as we were rolling up, started like preemptively like shooting at us. But I didn't hear no dings off of the APC. Didn't hear anything crazy like that, to be honest with you.
I guess from maybe you're not sure, but I assume I'm not very familiar with the Bangalore and how they work, but in the movies, which isn't a great place of reference. Aren't those used to like breach?
Oh yeah, to breach it. My bad. So what they were going to use it for was to lay on top to like throw it on top of the bunker that they had built up, because like they're like, okay, we can do one of two things. We can pump the bunker full of grenades, and they're probably going to start throwing the grenades back out, or we can use a really big explosive like a satchel charge and or the Bangalore, which has just been sitting there, like because they had told me it just been sitting there. They haven't been using it. They can use one of the two to like completely encave and like just destroy like the entire bunker. So like whoever's in there is for sure going to get like, like their bunker system's going to fall in on them. Um, but it just didn't happen. Like we just never got to use it. The Bangalore is still there to this day, I'm assuming, because I didn't see nobody pick it up.
That makes sense. In the beginning, you also talked about when you were getting off the vehicle. At some point between there and the trench, there were drones. But were those your drones or were those Russian drones initially?
Those were our drones, because I could hear them on the. I didn't know what they were saying, but they like I could hear them like saying like I understood a little bit of Ukrainian, but they're like saying like there was Russian. They have a nickname for Russians, like they just like call them a certain word, like. But yeah, like they're like hey, there's like three pistas here, like there's pistas here, pistas in the trench, and I remember it's like okay, like that's Russian in the trench, Russian in the trench. Like so, like they're most definitely like the like that, and we like they had briefed us. They said, "Hey, there's going to be an FPV, and there's going to be like a thermal drone, like to watch what's going on in the trench." Like, and like they initiated the attack with the FPV drone, pretty much.
That makes sense. In some of the videos that I've seen online, maybe I've talked about some or posted some of them. It seems like the Russians maybe have a contingency if they believe that a trench has now been taken by the Ukrainians, in which they will launch artillery on their own position, or I guess it was a previous position and now it's your position technically. Is that a common tactic that you saw? Because you said you started receiving, pretty accurate artillery soon after.
Yeah, we like that was pretty commonly known already. That they were going to do that. They told us, in fact, they're like, hey, after, well, they told me specifically, they're like, hey, after we take the trench, like expect like super heavy artillery just in our area and stuff like that. They didn't tell me it's going to be right on top of us, but it ended up being like right, like literally right on top of us. Like I said, the walls of the trench were all caved in and everything like that. So it was, I mean, as accurate as it can get.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to find this video, maybe play it as you're kind of telling that story, because very seemed like a very similar thing. And in terms of just Ukrainians were taking a trench, they took the trench, but I guess in this case, well, they actually couldn't get out of the trench because they were being hit with artillery. It was just very accurate all around the trench, and then at some point they decided to try to get out of there and egress. I guess the vehicle that was supposed to pick them up broke down, so they couldn't actually get out. And I think at what happened was at some point, once the artillery kind of stopped around the trench where they were, they egressed back to, I guess they were either going to a vehicle or they were just trying to get farther away. But in that process is when some of them got hit by the artillery. But some of them were able to get into the vehicle. And according to the video, the GoPro, they ended up leaving somebody in the trench. One of the Ukrainians, that he was like, just leave me, just go. And they're like, be quiet, we're coming back, and they, took who they could because a bunch of people were hurt. And then they ended up, well, the video says they came back and that guy ended up on the video ended up surviving. So what was your experience with now being in the trench? And well, first let me ask you this. I'd imagine once you have all realized now you own this space, you got your first opportunity presumably to see Russian fighters, right? And I guess what was that like? And did you have expectations of what you thought you were going to see? Were you impressed or not really? And what was that like?
Well, so like to be honest with you, like I didn't really when the sun like started coming up, I didn't really start like looking at the Russian bodies that were there. Um, like I kind of just was like looking outside of the trench more so. And I was like, all right, like, you know, like this is pretty, like nothing's really going on. Like I can hear the cannons again in the distance, but nothing's really coming towards us. Like nothing's really at us. And like a couple more minutes went by, and like there was some artillery rounds that, I mean, not sure if they were personally trying to hit our trench or not, but they like for sure landed close to our trench. That, and then we had some mortar rounds like land around our trench too. That was, I think the mortar was pretty. It was pretty scary getting shot at by a mortar. Honestly, I think more scary than the artillery, because I don't remember hearing the mortar like tube get shot off, but I can most definitely promise you, you will hear the artillery cannon get shot off towards your direction. Like that, I can tell you for sure. You'll hear it before it smacks into your trench. The mortar just like is kind of like, surprise, I'm here, boom. Like there's no like whistle, like there, like at least I didn't hear any of that. There was no preemptive warning. I just remember hearing like the small like shh, boom, and like I was like, oh, well, that was really close. What was that? And yeah, that was later on after, but again, we already owned the trench. And then my experience of like actually seeing the Russians, at least on the left side, because we stayed on our sides of the trench. Um, I the first one I came across, like he got absolutely cooked. He took a bunch of rounds. He it was weird. He didn't have any like armor on. He had no plate carrier, no nothing. Like he was out there with his camis on, and he had an AK, like he was slumped over, like on like his chest was to the ground, and his AK was like underneath him. Um, and then the second one I came across, he was, I mean, the guy looked, he had to be at least in his 50s. Like he was older. He had a pretty like salt and pepper beard, and yeah, he got like a pretty big stomach. He didn't seem like so physically fit or anything, but he was. I don't know what he was trying to do, because he had his back, like at least the way he died, his back was towards where we were coming from. Um, and like, yeah, I was like, dude, like you're sitting in a dead end, right? And your back is towards the one place that I know you hear shots coming from, because like Bob didn't have a suppressor on his rifle, and like he was like he went full auto and everything. Like I know you heard the shots coming from this way, so I don't know if he was trying to run away or what he was trying to do, but yeah, he was like, the way he was facing was like he was also slumped over towards the front, like, but he was more so like laying on his side. But he didn't have body armor either, like no body armor. He was just wearing camis. And then I only saw one more. I didn't go to the very end of the trench, because I didn't want to like leave my little field of fire. Um, and I didn't really go up to this person's body, but they most definitely took some rounds from 50 cal. I'll say that. Like there wasn't so much of that person that looked like they were too okay. Like they took some 50 cal for sure. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much what my experience was like seeing their bodies.
I imagine that. Well, was there any armor in the trench at all, or they just didn't have it on?
Yeah, there was. They had battle belts and everything. Like same kit that like you and I would have. Like they would have. They just weren't wearing it. Like I mean, they had grenades. They had mags in their mag pouches. They like literally the same stuff that we would have. They had, but they just didn't have it on them.
Which, in case you ever find yourself in a position like that, is the first thing that you do is throw that stuff on.
Yeah. Well, I think what I don't know, like, because I've been told this before, and like I've seen it quite a few times, is like the Russians would get comfortable in the trench, and like they would be like, okay, like they aren't gonna come for us, like they aren't gonna come hit us, like whatever. And like these guys, like I don't know, like I'm telling you, like they didn't shoot at us again. I like, not from my personal experience, and I can ask the guys, but like I don't remember hearing any shots like dinging off the APC, or like hearing on the radio, hey, they're shooting from this position, like, hey, enemy, like, I don't know, like 1 o'clock at the dead end of the trench, like right side, left side, or anything like that. Like I'm telling you, like these guys, I honestly, like I think that they were sleeping, and like they just didn't think that we were gonna like go hit their trench, and like they got comfortable, they took off their armor, and then when we were at their trench, like again when we were stalled outside, yeah, they shot back, but to I can only imagine what it's like to not have your night vision on to try to reload an AK at night when it's like kind of dark and you're inside of a trench, and like you gotta everything's like rushed because like it's either you or the other person that's got to go, so it's like like shit, like I gotta rush this. I really gotta reload this rifle, but I'm getting shot at by a 50 cal right now. So
Yeah, I had in Afghanistan, the base that I was on, it was just me and my team and some like Afghan contingencies. As we moved our fob from where we were to down the road, and long story short, like the Taliban had been saying that they were going to attack our base the whole time we were there. Of course, that's just what they do. But then it happened, and I already had my team's gear stage and all these things, and my teammate, he had jumped up. We had the plan. What the plan was. We had the positions already set up, and it happened. It cracked off, and he jumped up on the top of this, like, I guess maybe call it a hooch, but it was like the top of like a mud hut basically, and got behind the sandbag with his rifle with nothing on. I looked up and had to yell at him like, "Hey, dude, get down here, get your stuff on." He's like, "Oh, okay." It's like, yeah, let's do that first. So I could see where that could happen, and then once it's probably so heavy and you feel like you're being overwhelmed, what can you do? Maybe you feel like you're going to lose valuable seconds or time to try and get that other stuff on. And I mean, not that it would have helped anyways, right? Probably would have met the same fate regardless. So I don't know about your past, experiences in life. I know that you talked about your experiences in the Army. Was this the first time that you had ever seen, what to say, a dead person in like real life in a situation that wasn't like a funeral or something like that?
oh no, I mean, well, like I mean, in my civilian life, I did see one person like get shot, um, and they ended up passing away, but I didn't see them like dead there on the floor. They're actually still alive. Um, yeah, they were alive. They're pretty coherent actually, but other than that, no, I didn't really see any dead bodies. I mean, I ride bikes, motorcycles. I've seen people crash and die, but nothing like someone getting shot or blown up or anything like that.
I think the best way that I can explain that, because doing what I do now, I still see people like that. Sometimes they've been there for a while and sometimes they haven't. But um, the one thing I can always say is it's an odd experience. If I had to choose one word to describe it, it just is odd. Like it doesn't. I think for me, a blessing and a curse is that I have a terrible memory. So I can see things, or I have seen things, and it's not something that I think about really afterwards because I just forget that it ever happened almost. So um, did you kind of have a similar feeling, seeing those individuals in that way? And how long were you there before you got relieved and you had to be around these you know people, right?
So I wouldn't say it was odd. I would say it was more so like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I was honestly like I was just kind of like I was like okay, like there's dead people here. I'm not stepping on them. They're not stepping on me. They're kind of scattered out. Like I just didn't like honestly what I was trying to focus on, because again at this point, at that point of like me realizing like okay, like I'm still in a trench, so I'm still technically in the fight. Like I'm not safe. Like if they decide to send like a squad of guys to like counterattack, like and they want to roll up on us, they absolutely can. Like what I was thinking to myself was like, okay, there's bodies here, right? Like that's pretty badass. Like this is exactly what I came for. But I need to like watch my sector fire. Like I need to watch it. And like that's pretty much what I was thinking throughout that entire time I was in the trench. And that I would say we were probably there for about like I don't know, probably like 8 hours, 9 hours, like of like total time, like from start mission to end mission, it was like 8 9 hours, I would say, maybe a little less.
So then you got relieved and then you turned it over to a different group, right?
Well, there was a point in time where the trench was completely empty because I guess the Ukrainians that went in the Humvee and the APC, like, I guess they were trying to, like, I don't know, get their snacks too. I guess I don't know what delayed them, but they got delayed. But then our Ukrainian commander was like really pissed off that we stayed in the trench way longer than what we were supposed to. So there's a point where the trench was empty because we had picked up and left pretty much. Like they're like, hey, we're gonna have drones watch this area and like see what the Russians do or whatever. And but that was way above my pay grade. I didn't really ask any questions. I was just like, okay, they said we're leaving, so we're gonna leave. And we left in Humvees actually. Like nobody got in an APC or anything. Like we all got in Humvees, left, and then I don't know. I know for a fact that because we did another trench clearing not too far from that trench, and they said it was a friendly trench. And I remember seeing on the drone feed like the little like blue and green tape helmets. So I was like, oh, okay, like there's friendlies in that trench for sure. So eventually the Ukrainians got up in there. I don't know how long it was empty for, but
Gotcha. So what was kind of the situation after you left the trench? Was there some more downtime and kind of just waiting for the next job to be done?
we got like a week off. I didn't see any action or anything like that for like a week or maybe even more.
Right. So then when you go back or they're ready, hey, we're ready to go again, is that you have a similar task next time around?
No, we went to a different AO. Like we bounced around, and we got to this other AO, and we kind of were like we did nothing honestly. Like we got there, they said that there was going to be a mission for us, and we're like, okay, we got all psyched up, we got hyped and everything, zeroed our rifles, make sure everything was good, and like the mission just never came. Like they're like, hey, like cancel mission. Like we were just waiting around. They said no more mission, so like kind of just turned around, like went back to our little safe house and slept, and then we did that again for another AO. Um, and like it was the same thing, honestly. Like we went there, they're like, hey, like this is the mission. Like, can you guys do it? Like whatever. We're like, yeah, we got it. Like we can do it. Like let's do it. And this one was weird because like we didn't even get a chance to like load up or like get our rifles ready or anything. Like they're like, hey, cancel that mission. And yeah, it was like that was kind of like I don't know. It was just like, and what it was that the Russians were taking over that position so much and they were pushing past that position. So it was like if we kept up with that same plan, we weren't ever going to make it to that OP that we were supposed to be at because we were going to be fighting Russians along the way to get there. So it's like, but like that wasn't part of the plan. We aren't expecting. Okay, we gotta like fight two trenches to get to the building that we need to get to. At least on that second failed mission. Um, like like that wasn't part of the plan. So they're like, okay, well, we'll get some Ukrainians to light up that position, and you guys can flank around and go to the building. We're like, no, we're not going to have enemies behind us or potential enemies behind us while going into a building. Like, it's just not going to happen. So that one didn't work out. And then we ended up going back to Kyiv. Got a lot of downtime. Like, we were chilling. Pretty nice. Like, it was actually really relaxing. It's completely different in Kyiv. A lot of the civilians in Kyiv, like a lot of the men, they just act like the war isn't going on. Like they're just like in La La Land, I guess. I don't really know. They just don't want to fight, or I couldn't tell you. Like they just don't have the will to care, I guess.
Is it the same way right now there too in Kyiv?
I can ask. I didn't really ask, but the last time I spoke to one of my friends, but yeah, like I would assume so because man, these like they got like college kids and like they have this whole like rule like if you're in college like you can stay in college but after you're like 29 or something, I don't know what the age is, but after a certain age like you have to get conscripted into the military. But it's like once you use up all your 29-year-olds, what are you going to do, go to 28? Like you know, like you gotta really broaden out that spectrum of like, hey, we're taking everybody 20 and above. And then I mean, you're gonna have a lot of people kicking and crying, but like at least you'll have people to fight with.
It seems like that isn't Kyiv like the goal for Russia? Isn't that where they want to I'm not saying they don't want to go farther, but isn't that kind of like where if they take Kyiv, like in a sense, they'll declare like a victory in a way?
Yeah, oh yeah, I feel like if they did take Kyiv. Well, I don't think they would ever get a chance to take Kyiv because I can only imagine the terror that it would bring upon Russian soldiers to fight in Kyiv. But if they did, like hypothetically, if they did, yeah, that would be the win.
Yeah, I think I um, saw something, or I was watching a documentary on Netflix. It's about the Cold War, really, but there's like 9 episodes. I forget the name of it. But I'm only on 3, and it's going to go all the way. There's 9 episodes, and it's going to, I guess, end up talking, or has been kind of talking about Russia, and Ukraine and all that stuff. So it's very informational, kind of learn about what is going on. I think most people, I mean, even myself included, I mean, we know what's happening, we know what we're seeing, but the true motives behind, why they're doing what they're doing, maybe only. Well, I just want to say that there's they have their reasons for why they're doing what they're doing, and of course the Ukrainians are like, we're defending our land. This is our land. Like, you just came over the border, you're trying to hurt us, and now we're going to defend our place. Um, so that initial trench that you took, was that the only? Is that it for you, or did you go and do more things?
Oh no, I did more things. So that was just the downtime that we had. But after after Kyiv, we ended up going to the ever so famous Bakhmut. Um, and when we got there, like the city was pretty much on its last legs. Like there was a couple streets that haven't it was just a couple like literally like streets, like maybe like 5 or 6 streets that haven't been taken over, but it was kind of like gray zone slash like a Ukrainian can be in there one day, but a Russian will be there the next, and then it'll be Ukrainian. It was just very back and forth, and like that was probably the scariest times. Like was going into that city, like for people who think like city fighting is like cool and stuff, like you like I don't know, man. Like you got something wrong with you because that is like no, not a doubt in my mind, like the most scared any human can possibly be in their entire life. Like
Yeah, and from attacking a trench or assaulting a trench where it's like, hey, we know this place is here, we're gonna kind of get off here, and all these things are going to be happening, um, and you, for the most part, know everything's in front of you. You know, well, it should be, unless somebody screwed up somewhere along the way. But when you are inside of an urban space, you know, threats could be anywhere. And I think it's obviously more difficult to be able to say, like, hold a specific portion, right? Not only like from a manpower perspective and the types of munitions and things like that you're able to use, but communicating that amongst different groups of people, Ukrainians or fighters or whatever, becomes more difficult. I remember seeing, I don't know if it was the city that you just mentioned, but there's a video and it was like showing, I think they were like the Foreign Legion guys, but they were like in a hotel room or some type of room. They were like preparing all their gear, and they went and they were going on a mission, I guess, and they went into I believe it was the same city. And the mission that they got when they got in there, they're like, hey, we're supposed to be in that building over there. And they basically, I mean, it's frightening. Like you could tell they're kind of scared and they're being hit by things, and they're just like, we're not going to make it. We can't do it. Like, we got to go back. So they end up getting out of there and kind of going back to wherever they were. And he basically explains how it was like kind of a disaster, just didn't really work out in that way. But yeah, I think multiple areas where people can hurt you from is always a scarier thing, which is kind of one of the things that I'm trying to point out. I think like, a CQB aspect, or, modern CQB, we'll call it, where it's like, hey guys, we're going into this room or this building to take this take these rooms or take this building from these people that may be in here, almost always like what you practiced and what you trained in terms of getting in the room and everybody taking their corners and all the things like that. It's like very impractical because also too, you know, especially in a city that's already been decimated, probably you can barely probably walk through some of these buildings. Well, that's what I see, you know, like these houses, there's just rubble on the ground. You can barely move.
Yeah, so pretty much the only places that you can really like get into that's safe, that's like somewhat safe, is the basements like out there. But as far as doing like modern CQB, like a Battle Drill 6 or something like that, where like I don't know, like a line unit gets taught, like if you do a Battle Drill 6 or like just like hey, you get your corner and I get my corner, like you know everyone does like everyone gets their corner, like we strong wall like this room or something like that. If you do that like that exact like by the book in a city like Bakhmut, I don't know, like maybe you got like one room that you'll survive, two rooms. I don't know. You'll die like eventually.
As long as nobody's there, you're fine, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like, but if somebody's in that room waiting for you, like with a barrel pointed towards the doorway, I can almost guarantee you if the first guy doesn't catch a couple rounds, the second guy's gonna catch a couple rounds. Like somebody's gonna get some rounds.
And then nobody wants to go in that room anymore, right? Like, oh, oh,
Yeah, like, I like it ended up being like our SOP, like at least for Bakhmut for the short time that we were like working there. Um, it ended up being that everyone just carried four grenades on them, and like we just whoever was at the front of the stack like would just hold a gun at the door that we wanted to go into, and we were throwing two grenades into the room, like, and we would try to throw them into opposite corners. And then like right when the grenades would go off, like then we would go in. But you know, usually when somebody takes two grenades or just even a grenade, most of the time they're pretty out of it already. Like most of the time they're pretty out of it. That like wall banging, like shooting through the walls, like that got pretty big. Like if we knew like, hey, like this is an office building and like the cubicles are pretty much the same length, or like if this is a college university, like the dorm rooms they're all pretty much the same. So like you know that the room's about like you know 2.5 meters long, and so you know that this is a corner right here. Pop some rounds into the wall, so like that you can try to like if somebody was there, we'd hit them through the wall, and like you'd be surprised the amount of people clap through a wall without really knowing that somebody's there. Like you like be pretty surprised, and you'd also be pretty surprised of like, hey, we're going into this room not knowing if somebody's in there, but we're gonna throw some grenades, and you'd be surprised like, okay, like we got like two people with a grenade, like they're done. But once we got to the point of running out of grenades, that's pretty much when it was like, okay, mission set over. Like we got to go re up on grenades.
right. Um, I wanted to ask this back. I guess it's more applicable maybe in the trench or whatever, but I've been posting also some videos of Ukrainians in trenches. I think they've always been in the trench. Um, oh, actually, no. The one video I did where they were in that basement and they were kind of holding on the stairs, the cellar, or wherever it was. They were switching the rifle into what would presumably be their weak shoulder or their off shoulder. They're right-handed. The rifle's in their right shoulder, and then to minimize their exposure and still be able to engage at the greatest possible angle, they would switch their rifle into their other shoulder. Is that anything that you saw or anybody that taught you that, or something that you may have found applicable, or something that you try to do yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, I learned that in the American military. Like, you know, if you got a wall, like let's say, or a corner, you're coming around a corner, but you're right-handed and the corner's on your right side, switch over to your left, so like that, you know, half of your body isn't sticking out for no reason. When you could just shoot from your left shoulder and you know have way less exposure. And obviously, you're shooting from your left shoulder. Like even if you have to close your right eye so like that you can get a sight picture and you know come around that corner nice and slow, pie it off, and whatever's on the other end, you know, let it rip. But like I said, there wasn't for my guys, they were pretty well trained enough to do that. Most of them would do that. Some of the Ukrainians though, those guys, like, they've adapted their own method of CQB of like, okay, like we're gonna go into this room, right, and we're gonna pre-fire the corner. So like, let's say they ran out of grenades, we're gonna pre-fire a corner like while we're in the room. So if there is somebody there, like they're gonna catch lead, I might catch some lead, but they're gonna catch lead too. And then the two man felt more comfortable, like, okay, he already shot, like I'm gonna go in now.
So some of the videos I've seen on the pre-firing, and that it's like it's not just Ukrainians pre-firing; it's Israeli guys are pre-firing too. And I can probably say that I don't really understand it. Um, and so maybe you could clear this up. But in the instances where I see it happening now, maybe they're shooting at a pile of rubble, or not rubble, but like pile of things, because there could be somebody in those pile of things or hiding, kind of trying to get small. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but it seems like they're shooting at something that they know there isn't, and they know there isn't a person there because they're looking at it, right? And so I do wonder, is the tactic, maybe sometimes it is, okay, I hope somebody is here in this thing that I can't see, so I'm shooting at this. But is it also, well, I know there's nobody here, but I'm still shooting at this wall, through this threshold, because it will maybe prevent or somebody from wanting to push out, or kind of, I don't know, scaring them in a way to not fight. I don't know.
So I never really understand the pre-fire either, to be honest with you, because again, I kind of stuck with the whole American idea of like, you see something, you shoot something, you say something, like, like, okay, like I see a person, I shot a person, okay, like then you'd be like, hey, yellow room one, like one KIA or something like that, like you say something like that, but like the whole pre-fire thing, I never did, like I saw guys, like holding like the AKs and like M4s around the corner, not even looking into the room and pre-firing. And I've heard stories of guys hitting people like that and stuff like that. Um, but most of the time, like those stories, those people got shot at, like shot back at. Like they'd be like, okay, they went to go enter the room, but then that guy that was in the room shot at them, missed, and to prevent like you exposing your body, they pre-fired the corner, and that's how they got that guy. Which I will say this, like, if I was in that position, if I was ever, I've never been in that position, so I couldn't really say what I did do, but I would say, like, if I would have been in that position, I probably would have pre-fired too. I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have, or I would say that's probably blind firing, because pre-firing is like not knowing that somebody's there and you're preemptively expecting someone to be there. That's be more blind firing. I would say blind firing is an actual thing where you can actually blind fire and get somebody.
Yeah, I think I associate pre-firing with, you're pre-firing. They call it pre-firing because you're going to enter or take that space, like after you do that or within the same momentum. But I agree with you. It's like, do whatever you have to do to get the job done in that moment. And if it takes you to like not expose yourself beyond the threshold because literally there's a pile of junk in front of you and you can, like, to move effectively, like there's a door half down in the threshold, you don't have any grenades, like, well, there's the option of getting in here fast and then also believing that the person behind me knows what they're doing, is trained, and is going to pick up this sector or whatever. Yeah, it's like doing things outside of the box to get the job done. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I could see where, if I was in a similar situation, it's also something that, if it needed to be done, it needed to be done. And you see this, a lot, like the trenches is something that you see a lot. And I think it was like over the past, we'll just say month or so, I always thought the tactical shooting thing, and I'm not saying like blind firing is tactical shooting, and kind of anybody can do that. But I used to think, well, tactical shooting is not a thing, right? And then when I started posting the videos of the Ukrainians and Israeli guys switching their rifle into their off shoulder, which seems like just something that makes complete sense in certain situations. And people don't really like that idea. And it's like, for whatever reason, I'm like, oh, maybe this is tactical shooting. You know what I mean? So in the trench, though, I see people like, I don't want to say giving Ukrainians a hard time. First of all, they're at their house, right? Like, in America, like just comfortable and like never been in combat, never been in a situation where they just had to do what they had to do to try to get the job done. But they'll be, maybe they're not exposing themselves, their head, to get rounds in the direction of where they know the enemy is, right? Because you could end up in a situation where the person, the combatant that does that first, that goes, well, let me get my rifle in my shoulder and let me get up here and get behind my sights, just so happens to be the guy who gets shot because the other guy is not doing that at all, right? And so when you're doing that, maybe you're exposing yourself and giving him something to shoot where you have nothing to hit on the other end, right?
So my experience in like some more of the trenches later on in my time in Ukraine, I did see a lot of people like doing the whole black fire over the trench. Um, my problem with that is if you look at those videos that you're talking about, look at the angle of the barrel. Like I'm talking like that's like a 45-degree angle. Like they're just shooting up into the sky at this point. Like I'm not sure. Like when you're in the Marines, were you kind of familiar with like machine gun theory or something like that? Something similar. Like machine gun theory is like you gotta have like your barrel aimed off like of the ground, like let's say like 1 meter high, which is like 3 feet. So that's like right at the crotch of the man, pretty much the average size man. So like if you're holding your barrel at a 45-degree angle, your rounds are going way above that, right? So you're not able to hear like if there was somebody on the other end of it, they'll hear the gun going off, but they're not getting suppressed. They're not hearing the snaps of the round. They're not hearing like you're not impacting anything but like maybe a super tall tree or something like that, which there ain't too many of those out there. But you know, you're just not really suppressing anything. You're just shooting up into the air at that point, and that's my biggest gripe. Now I did see people like, hey, like I'm gonna like one guy like in particular, he was really good at it where he would stick up his PKM and he would put his bipod legs into the dirt and like he would use that and he would like get it pretty leveled with the ground and he would shoot like at the horizon line like and he got pretty pretty good at like okay this is like about where I need to be blind firing at and like that gave everyone the opportunity to like okay now we can all stand up and start actually taking shots and then he would stop shooting and then actually get an actual sight picture and then start shooting from that position but a lot of them they just get trigger happy or just whatever it may be they're scared or like hey we just got to get rounds down range but holding your like aiming your barrel that high at that angle you're not even close to suppressing anybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you can look at that like just like you said, and I can see times where I see the same thing, and I'm like, that's not really helpful, But in a way to again, maybe this is like tactical shooting or whatever, but um, to be able to minimize your exposure and still shoot a certain direction over a barrier or a piece of cover or whatever it is, turning your gun, canting your gun sideways allows you to be able to, kind of overcome that angle as long as it's still level to a certain degree. But yeah, I agree with you. I've seen that too, where it's like, okay, that's not helpful at all. Or it could at least be more effective if you had it more level to the ground or something like that. So, um, I think also, I don't want to say like comparing law enforcement and military because honestly, the comparison is pretty silly. But I don't know. Sometimes you see people commenting about soldiers shooting, right? And they'll just be like, "Oh, they're shooting at nothing," or whatever. And a lot of times, and maybe you could attest to this, is that most of the time, in my experiences, you're shooting at where you believe somebody to be, where you were told they were. And not necessarily at a particular person because a lot of the time you don't actually see them, right? So shooting at a tree line or shooting at a trench level or shooting into a house or into a space or into a hole in the wall or something like that. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, I actually got a pretty good example of that. There was one time where we kind of like we had a machine gun set up in a trench, and there's like another like a Russian trench, probably about like 400 meters away, so pretty far out there. Um, and like the machine gun position, we had Ukrainians in there, and one of them decided like, hey, I'm going to shoot at their trench and just see like what they do. And so he let the machine gun off, right? And immediately there was just, I mean, like it was, I don't know, probably like 20 seconds into it, like he let his machine gun belt go off at that one trench, and there was two other trenches. Like I'm assuming that's what we were told by, and that's what we saw in the drone footage. Actually, was there's two other trenches like kind of hidden, um, and it wasn't even really trenches. It just seemed like a foxhole pretty much. And like I'm assuming they did it like Vietnam style, like it was like a spider hole or a foxhole, and it like had like a little bunker in there, and there was like 3 guys or 4 guys in there, and then same thing for the other one. Well, those guys, like the second they heard the snaps of the rounds, they decided to pick up and go straight into that trench and get into defensive positions. And thank God we didn't do an advance or anything like that. But like, yeah, we got a lot of information off of that because now we know how many men are actually there, not how many men are just in that trench. But now we know how many people are in that area that are trying to cover that trench. Um, and yeah, like so, just firing those rounds at what would be for some people nothing gave us a lot of vital information.
I've also seen, and probably a video I'm going to work on, is Ukrainians are in a trench, and it seems like probably they believe that their position is relatively unknown to the Russians, because you can hear the guys in the trench saying, "Don't shoot," "Don't shoot unless you see something," or wait, and I can only imagine the reason for that is, um, they have some level of surprise, and they would rather those individuals move into the open before they engage, rather than, hey, we're here, they're over there, let's just start shooting now. And now they go, oh, they're over here. Hey guys, they're over here now, right? So not shooting at all can be also beneficial.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes that does happen, but most definitely the Russians they know where the trenches are. That like for whatever I don't know what like video you'd be talking about in particular, but I promise you like you're not hiding from the Russian military. They know exactly where we are.
This video that I'm thinking about doing, the video is so long. It's like 40 minutes. So I think I'm probably going to cut it up. And so there's stuff to talk about. I don't like sitting there and just watching the whole thing over again, but they take some casualties. The Ukrainians do. They do very little shooting, from what I can tell, but like 3 Russian tanks roll right by the trench that they're in. And they're like, you could tell they're scared, One guy was already had tourniquets on, had bandages on his leg. Another guy was hurt too. Like neither of those guys were fighting at all. Like they were just laying down. And another guy took some shrapnel underneath his armpit. And they applied a chest seal to him. And then you can hear him talking, or it's translated, so I'm just reading the subtitles. But they're asking, like, basically saying the tanks are coming, and do you have the AT4? Where's the AT4? Does someone have an AT4? And they basically are in a scared panic hurry to move along the trench at a crawl and try and drag everybody with them. And you can hear that, you can actually see one of the tanks go by, and you can hear them rolling by too. And I was like, that's crazy. Aside from the other video I did where those guys were in the cellar, this other one has to be up there in terms of being pretty scary. So I guess when you went over there, would you say, like, I guess you were a volunteer basically? And so when you're a volunteer, do you get paid for doing that?
Yeah, you get paid, but I don't know. There's some people who do I guess you would say actual volunteer work where you don't get paid at all, and that's a different style of helping Ukraine. But combat wise, I haven't heard of, unless you're doing freelance stuff, you don't get paid because you're not assigned to any unit. You're not assigned to the Ukrainian military. Um, but yeah, like it's you get paid. Like it's not a lot, but you get paid.
And so, to kind of wrap this up, we covered why you
wanted to go over there. And I think, I don't want to say it's a valid reason. I'll just say that that's the reason that many men do what they do. I mean, it's the reason I did it. It's the reason why I know a lot of other people did it, because they were looking for something. And then it seems like you went over there and you got what you were looking for. And so I assume in that regard, you feel fulfilled that you achieved or did what you set out to do. Is that right?
Kind of. Actually, I mean, I don't know. Like, there, it left a big void. Like Ukraine left a massive void in my heart for a lot of people. A lot of friends that I made, didn't make it back. Some of them got hurt, like really hurt, like missing limbs. Yeah, and it just left a big hole in both my head and my heart, I guess you can say. And I think that hole is bigger than the hole that I had of wanting to see combat. Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing that I got to deal with now.
Yeah, and just like I was sitting in front of a computer in 2005 or whatever it was, and because what we see oftentimes is it is in some sense reality, but the say industry or that aspect of doing things like how you explained it in the beginning, which was, that's me, that's who I want to be, that's what I want to do. I want to see combat, and let's just say like it looks cool, right? And then you go, and it seems like almost everybody has that same experience, also has the same feelings you do about your experiences, and they oftentimes come back and have to tell stories that they don't want to tell, and relive things that they don't want to have to relive. But that's also a part of combat, right? That people don't really think about or see, and YouTube does a great job, and people on YouTube do a great job at glorifying in a way, or making that stuff out to be cool or seem cool, and in some ways it is, but a lot of people get hurt and don't make it home, and families get torn apart and all those things, and then you are left to deal with your own experiences throughout the rest of your life, good, bad, or whatever. So for anybody else that is thinking about going over there and doing those things, which, by the way, we probably won't convince somebody one way or another, because you couldn't tell me when I was 16 what I was going to do and not do. And I don't think anybody could have told you after you saw that video, like, no, you're not doing that, But what would be your advice to anybody that is thinking about going over there to fight, I guess?
My biggest piece of advice would be do it if you think it's going to better your life. And if you don't think it is, then don't do it. But take in mind that everything that happens in Ukraine follows you back to the real world when you come back. And that's pretty much it. Because man, you go over there and you see a grocery store get blown up, or a pizzeria get blown up, and people will know what I'm talking about when I mean the pizzeria getting blown up. And you see that, and it's crazy. When you're actually there, or when you hear about it and you're like, yeah, I'm in Kyiv chilling, what's up? And then you're on the phone with somebody and it goes silent because they're eating a slice of pizza, and now they're not with us anymore. So you gotta really think about everything that goes on, because it sticks with you. I promise you, it does. It's permanent. It's some people might be able to forget. I know you said you can, but Ukraine's a different animal. I don't think anybody will forget some of the stuff they saw or heard or just did in Ukraine in general. Trust me, it's one hell of a drug, as they say.
Yeah. And this is maybe, I had another podcast about transitioning out of the military. Maybe this is kind of a little bit different or whatever. but the world continues to move along regardless of the experiences that you had over there, you know. So you come back and you've seen all these things, you've done all these things, and it's like, but to other people, they just been living the normal life, you know, going to the store, you know, laughing with friends and doing all these things. And it's not like you can't really expect that for them to understand the things that you saw and the things that you did. So that part of it can also be um, difficult to deal with, you know. Um, do you have any thoughts about going back over there, or no?
Actually, no. My life is it's been getting better actually. Like I met this girl that I'm like pretty deeply in love with now. Like she makes me extremely happy. We got we got a couple babies of our own, like her babies, but they're my babies. And like yeah, like honestly, I couldn't picture myself leaving her to go back to Ukraine ever. Like maybe if God forbid me and her didn't work out, then yeah, I'd probably go back to Ukraine then. But otherwise, I think I'm gonna stay home sweet home and just be here with her and live life with her. And like I mean, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty content with myself. But if that day ever did come, then I guess I'll go out there and get some more GoPro footage for you. But like yeah, I'm gonna stay stateside for a bit.
Do you think it's a wise idea or a honorable idea for someone who has no experience, right? Who didn't join the military, who has, you know, has never been to see something similar to what you saw and have the feelings that you had about going over there because, you know, having no connection to Ukraine, having no other reasons to go do it other than that looks cool. I want to be that guy. I want to do that. Do you think, would you say that that's maybe a valid kind of reason for somebody with no experience to go seek out something like that, or would you suggest that is worth it? Because I think me and you both know that what you see and how you feel about what you see, like, oh, this is cool, I want to go do this, and then you get over there and you're like, what am I doing, you know? And then you have those experiences. You're like, yeah, I don't even, you know, what is that worth? I guess.
Yeah, I would steer clear of trying to experience it yourself, especially like thank God I had somewhat of kind of even a smidge of training and like even then I already knew like kind of how to be tactically sound because if I didn't have those things and I didn't have a half decent squad that I was working with, I don't know if I probably would have like been doing this podcast or what. I don't know where I'd be, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'd be here.
Yeah. Well, it's been 2 hours. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to get on here and talk to me.
Yeah, dude. No problem. One thing, if people are gonna ask questions, they can DM me to my Instagram. I'm not sure if you want to link it, but because I did help a couple people come from America to go over to Ukraine and fight. Like I was their connect to do that. So if there is people who do want to do it and are serious about it, like you can link my Instagram. I can tell them what they got to do, where they got to go, what they want to do.
All right. Yeah, cool. We'll talk about that and make that happen. I appreciate it.
All right, man.